Why don't they make things like they used to? Well, the short answer is money, but understanding that answer is going to take a little bit more explaining. Let's go back to the 1920s, when the American car market was reaching a tipping point. The Roaring Twenties were in full swing, and people weren't really buying new cars because they already had ones that worked. Now, the General Motors company was unhappy with this, and they wanted to make a little bit more money. So a team within the company thought, well, if we make slightly different models every single year, we can probably convince people to buy a new car, even if they don't really need one. And as this idea was very successful, it spread to other automotive companies before spreading throughout the entire American economy. Now, this term described bringing in the new and getting rid of the not so old as planned obsolescence, and it didn't really come into play until a couple of years later during the height of the Great Depression. It was first mentioned by a real estate broker named Bernard London, who had the idea that we could end the Great Depression through government-mandated planned obsolescence. Simply put, he believed that having the government put shelf lives on ordinary, everyday things that didn't really have a shelf life would help to add more money into the economy, stimulating it and pulling the American populace out of the Great Depression. Now, Bernard's term didn't really gain widespread recognition until the 1950s, when designer Brooks Stevens was speaking on his own version of planned obsolescence. Now, his definition was a little bit different, and he said that you would be instilling in the buyer the desire to own something a little newer, a little better, and a little sooner than necessary. Over time, unfortunately, this definition has changed more into designing a product that has a failure point that makes it unusable sooner than it could be to make a company more money. So now that we've gone over some of the definitions and the history, let's explain a little bit about how modern planned obsolescence works. Now let's say you're a company selling pens, and we'll take two examples here to understand how planned obsolescence works. So let's take Company A. Company A is making the perfect pen. It will never break, it'll never run out of ink, and it'll last the customer for their entire life. So every single customer is buying one pen. Let's say these pens cost $10 a piece, so one customer gets the company $10. Now let's take a look at Company B. Company B is making pens that are almost as good as Company A, but they do run out of ink eventually, they do wear down, and the line stops getting as good as it works. But let's say the pen lasts 10 years. So a customer is going to buy from Company B, see, oh, that pen lasted 10 years, that's pretty good, let's buy another one. And so even if Company B sells their pens for a little bit cheaper, let's say $7.50 a pen, they're going to be selling to the same customer 2, 3, 4 times, making a bunch more money per customer than Company A would. And over time, companies have realized this and have started purposefully introducing flaws into their products so they break sooner, making them more money. Now, obviously, this isn't done with just pens, so let's explain a few more examples of how planned obsolescence works. You could have a product with non-replaceable parts that break sooner than the rest of the product. You could have a product that is extremely, extremely difficult to repair, or is cheaper to buy a new one than to repair it. Or, if you're looking at digital products, you can introduce software updates that slow down older versions, making them less usable. Now, that last point actually resulted in a lawsuit for a certain unnamed large fruit company. Now, this company was sued for about $500 million, but for a company of that size, it's pennies. It means almost nothing. And because of that, companies today continue to get away with all sorts of terrible examples of planned obsolescence. Now let's take a quick step back from these modern examples and take a look at the title of this video. And what it's usually referring to is tools and materials. Now, I do believe that there is some truth to this saying. As companies became more modern, they started outsourcing production, using cheaper materials, and decreasing production time, which has resulted in an overall drop of quality to many, many products. However, I do think there are some errors in this way of thinking. And one of these errors that I think isn't really considered a lot is survivorship bias. Let's use the example of hammers to make this point. Now, say you had a company that made hammers 100 years ago, and for every 100 hammers you made, 2 of them would survive until now. With a modern company making hammers, it hasn't been 100 years yet, and we can't really test to see if those new 100 hammers are better than the old 100 hammers. Because of differences in manufacturing, there was a lot of range in tools and materials back in the day. You could have things that are as good as possible, or as bad as possible within the same bunch of tools. Whereas today, with things being made on production lines and in very, very controlled settings, there's not too much variance in what's being made. I think it would be really interesting if somebody did a study on this to really put the whole concept to bed once and for all. Unfortunately, that study has not been made yet, so there isn't a 100% concrete answer for it. but I wonder what you all think about it. Now, in the modern day, whether it's due to planned obsolescence or other factors, we do tend to throw things away sooner than they really need to be. And if you're interested in seeing how somebody like me creates cool projects out of things that are thrown away on a shoestring budget, consider checking out my other channel, Nathan's Workshop, linked down below and linked on my channel page. I've been spending a lot more time on that channel than this one, so consider checking it out if that's something that interests you. But that's all I have on this topic, so if you have any other burning, unanswered questions you'd like to see answered, just drop them down in the comments and maybe I'll get to them. But at the very least, now you know why they don't make things like they used to.